Hello, Year 9, and welcome to Wednesdays of Mice and Men lesson. We have now finished reading the novel. On Monday, we finished reading chapter 6, which is the last chapter of the novel, where George and Lenny appear in the brush and they discuss what Lenny did. And then we have George deciding to tell Lenny one last time the story of the dream that they have of owning their own little piece of land and becoming independent. And as George does that, he sends Lenny off into almost a dreamlike state, looking across the water, and then shoots him in the head. Very sad ending, but also some might argue that it's actually the only way that it could have ended, and that Steinbeck was showing us throughout the whole novel that it would always end badly, and he did that through foreshadowing. Okay, and foreshadowing is going to be the focus of today's lesson. We are going to look at this concept and look at this technique that Steinbeck uses to all throughout the novel. We're going to look at three different sequences of extracts. So we're going to look at three little groups of extracts, and we're going to be looking at and exploring how Steinbeck uses this technique of foreshadowing. Now, foreshadowing for you is going to be a really, really key concept and a key bit of terminology as you move into your GCSE years. If you're reading novels such as A Christmas Carol, or plays such as Macbeth, or Blood Brothers, or An Inspector Calls, foreshadowing is a technique that is used throughout a lot of the literature that you're going to be studying in the lead up to your GCSEs in a few years' time. So this is kind of just the start of us teaching you what this technique is, why writers use it, and how it's important for structuring the stories and structuring the response of the reader to what they have read. Okay, so first of all, what is foreshadowing? Okay, so just as you can see in front of you right now, we can see John Steinbeck's novel of Mice and Men tells the story of two different friends who share the same dream. Throughout the novel, starting with the title, Steinbeck provides clues as to what will happen next. This is done through a process known as foreshadowing. So just that link to the title there, as I mentioned in Monday's lesson, the title is Of Mice and Men, which is a line, or a part of a line, from a poem, very famous poem called To a Mouse by a Scottish poet called Robbie Burns. And the line actually reads, "The best laid plans of mice and men aft gang agly." Now, he wrote in an old Scottish dialect, and basically that line means the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, or often fail. Okay, so we can plan, we can make our plans, we can set our goals, but very often these plans will fail. So already there, within the title of Mice and Men, there is a suggestion that plans made in this novel will fail. And now that we've read the final chapter of the novel, we can see that foreshadowing within the title can be seen. It's clear there. Okay, so we've got here a description of the technique. Okay, foreshadowing is a literary device in which a writer gives an advance hint of what's to come later in the story. Foreshadowing can be done through many means: dialogue, character, actions, scene descriptions, and titles of chapters, or the novel itself, as we can see here with Of Mice and Men. Generally, the function of foreshadowing is to build anticipation in the reader about what might happen next, and adds dramatic tension to a story. It adds emphasis to the event when it finally occurs. Okay, and so here we've got that description. We've then got a cartoon, a kind of newspaper comic cartoon here that is is all about foreshadowing. Okay, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look carefully at this cartoon of a turkey teaching a class. Okay, have a look. What is being foreshadowed in this cartoon? Write your answers down to these questions. What is being foreshadowed in this cartoon? And how are dialogue and visual elements used to convey this idea? And there's a bit of a hint here. Look at the teaching turkey's shadow. Look at the shadow, okay? You can pause this video now to write down your answers to these questions, and then we will move on. Okay, so we're ready to move on now. We've just had a brief introduction to the concept of foreshadowing, and we are going to now look at 3 different sequences of extracts where we're looking at how different aspects of the novel are foreshadowed throughout. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So this is the first sequence we're going to look at, okay, and it's the sequence I've called is I like to pet nice things. Okay, so we've got 3 different extracts, and we've got some questions at the bottom. So I'm going to go through these extracts, and then I would like you to answer these questions at the bottom. Okay, so extract 1. George is reminding Lenny why they had to leave their last job in the town of Weed. Just wanted to feel that girl's dress. Just wanted to pet it like it was a mouse. Well, how the hell didn't she know you just wanted to feel her dress? She yells and we got to sneak out in the dark and get out of the country. All the time, something like that. All the time. Well, look, Lenny, if you just happen to get in trouble like you always done before, I want you to come right here and hide in the brush. That's chapter 1. We then have extract 2, and this is from chapter 5 within the novel. Lenny is alone in the barn while other men are playing horseshoes. Lenny sat in the hay and looked at a little dead puppy that lay in front of him. And Lenny said softly to the puppy, "Why'd you got to get killed? You ain't so little as mice. I didn't bounce you hard. You wasn't big enough," he said. "They told me you wasn't. I didn't know you get killed so easy." That's chapter 5. Then the third extract is also from chapter 5. Curly's wife sits with Lenny in the barn and asks about his love of rabbits. Lenny moved cautiously close to her. "I like to pet nice things." "Well, who wouldn't? When I'm doing my hair, sometimes I just sit and stroke it 'cause it's so soft. Feel right around there and see how soft it is." Lenny's big fingers fell to stroking her hair. "Look out now, you'll muss it." She jerked her head sideways and Lenny's fingers closed on her hair and hung on. "Let go," she cried. "You let go." Lenny was in a panic. He screamed then, and Lenny's other hand closed over her mouth and nose. "You're gonna get me in trouble just like George says you will. Now don't you do that." And she continued to struggle. He shook her, and then she was still, for Lenny had broken her neck. And then he whispered in fright, "I done a bad thing. I done another bad thing." Lenny went back and looked at the dead girl. A puppy lay close to her. And that's from chapter 5 also. So we have 3 different extracts, one from chapter 1 and 2 from chapter 5, where we are foreshadowing, where Steinbeck, is foreshadowing that Lenny likes to pet nice things, but he's too strong to be as gentle as he needs to be when he's petting a mouse or a puppy or when he's stroking Curly's wife's hair. So we have 5 questions here I'd like you to answer. What happened in Weed that made it necessary for George and Lenny to hide and sneak away? What does George say to indicate that things like this have happened before? That's question 1. What animals does Lenny like to pet? Why does he say he likes to pet them? How does the puppy die? Then juxtaposition is a literary tool where two things are put next to each other to create emphasis or to add a layer of meaning. In the last sentence of this final excerpt, what two things are juxtaposed? What is being emphasized? So look at this last line of extract 3. And then finally, how does Steinbeck use foreshadowing to signal that Curly's wife will die? Give at least 2 specific examples. Okay, so we've looked at 3 different extracts in sequence, and we've been looking at how Lenny likes to pet nice things. I would like you to pause the video now, answer these 5 questions in your exercise book or on whatever paper you're using. Remember, year 9, I would like you, all of your teachers actually would like you to keep your work that you've been doing on Of Mice and Men neat and tidy. Keep it collated in some way, organized in some way. We are going to be asking to see it when eventually you come back to school. Okay? So take some time, pause the video and answer these questions. Off you go. Okay, so hopefully you have answered those questions. We are going to move on now to our next sequence of extracts. We have, again, 3 extracts here, one from chapter 1, one from chapter 4, and one from chapter 5. And the theme here in this sequence is a little piece of land. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about George and Lenny wanting that dream of having their own land, their own farm, being independent, not having to move around, to be able to create what they want and have what they want out of life. An easy life, a simple life. Yes, they're not asking to be celebrities. They're not asking to be rich. They're not asking to own lots of stuff. What they are looking for is a little bit of freedom. Okay, so I'm going to go through these 3 extracts, and once again, there's 5 questions for you to answer. So extract 1. The night before they arrive at their new job, George and Lenny are spending the night alone by the water. Lenny pleaded, "Come on, George, tell me, please, George, like you've done before." George's voice became deeper. He repeated his words rhythmically, as though he had said them many times before. "Okay, someday we're gonna have a little house and a couple of acres and a cow and some pigs, and we'll have a big vegetable patch and a rabbit hutch and chickens. And when it rains in the winter, we'll just say the hell we're going to work, and we'll build up a fire in the stove and sit around it and listen to the rain coming down on the roof. Nuts. I ain't got time for no more." So that's from chapter 1. Extract 2 is from chapter 4. Lenny is talking with Crooks, the stable hand, about their plan to get their own farm. "You're nuts." "We are too. You ask George." "You're nuts." Crooks was scornful. "I seen hundreds of men come by on the road and on the ranches with bindles on their back and the same damn thing in their heads. Hundreds of them. They come and they quit and go on, and every damn one of them's got a little piece of land in his head, and never a goddamn one of them ever gets it. You guys is just kidding yourself. You'll talk about it a hell of a lot, but you won't get no land." That's from chapter 4. And then extract 3. After Lenny kills Curly's wife, George and Candy are discussing what they will do next. Now Candy spoke his greatest fear. "You and me can get that little place, can't we, George? You and me can go there and live nice, can't we, George? Can't we?" Before George answered, Candy dropped his head and looked down at the hay. He knew. George said softly, "I think I know from the very first. I think I know we'd never do her." And that's from chapter 5. So you can see from this sequence of extracts that the little piece of land that George and Lenny are always talking about is foreshadowed all the way through, and the loss of that dream, Losing that dream is foreshadowed all the way through. We can see when Crooks says, "You're kidding yourself." We can see, "You talk a hell of a lot, but you won't get no land." He's telling them, but he's also telling us as the reader, their dream will not come to fruition. It will not become a reality. And also here, when Candy realizes that the dream that he's only just come in on won't happen, he drops his head and he knows. Okay, so we've got these 5 questions. In the first excerpt, as he has done before, in quotation marks, what does George describe to Lenny? Second question, at the end of the first excerpt, George breaks off suddenly, saying he ain't got no time for no more. Why does George stop his description so abruptly? Question 3, does Crooks think Lenny and George will get their own little piece of land? Explain his reason. In the final excerpt, what is it that George knowed from the very first? And finally, how does Steinbeck use foreshadowing to hint that George and Lenny will not get their own farm? Find 2 examples, one from the first excerpt and another from the second excerpt. Okay, so you've got a few minutes now. You can pause the video to answer those 5 questions, and then we will move on to the final sequence of extracts. Okay, hopefully you've answered those questions to the best of your ability. We will move on to the final sequence now. Okay. And this is the sequence that I've called right in the back of the head. Okay. And they are from 2 extracts from chapter 3 and 1 from chapter 6. And those of you that know what happens at the end of the novel, this is all about shooting something right in the back of the head. So we'll look at extract 1. Carlson, one of the ranch hands, has been complaining about Candy's old dog. "Well, I can't stand him in here," said Carlson. "That stink hangs around even after he's gone." He walked over and looked down at the dog. "Got no teeth," he said. "He's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't got no good to you, Candy. And he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy?" The old man squirmed uncomfortably. "Well, hell, I had him since he was a pup." Carlson was not to be put off. "Look, Candy, if you was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head, why, he'd never know what hit him. I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it. Right in the back of the head. He won't even quiver." Candy said, "Maybe tomorrow. Let's wait till tomorrow." "I don't see no reason for it," said Carlson. He went to his bunk, pulled his bag from underneath it, and took out a Luger pistol. "Let's get it over with." That's from chapter 3. Second extract is also from chapter 3, later on in the chapter. After Carlson shoots Candy's dog, Candy asks George and Lenny if he can join them in buying their little piece of land. "You seen what they done to my dog tonight. I ought to have shot that dog myself, George. I should not have let no stranger shoot my dog." That's chapter 3. And this next chapter is from chapter 6. Extract is from chapter 6. After Lenny kills Curly's wife, Curly is searching for Lenny in order to shoot him painfully in the guts. George finds Lenny at their agreed upon meeting place in the brush. George reached in his side pocket and brought out Carlson's Luger. He looked at the back of Lenny's head, at the place where the spine and skull were joined. Lenny turned his head. "No, Lenny. Look down across the river. Like you can almost see the place. I ain't mad. I never been mad. And I ain't now. And that's the thing I want you to know." And George raised the gun and steadied it, and he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. The hand shook violently, but his face set and his hand steadied. He pulled the trigger. The crash of the shot rolled up the hills and rolled down again. Lenny jarred and then settled slowly forward to the stand, and he lay without quivering. That's from chapter 6. So here we can definitely see the foreshadowing of the death of Lenny. We can see where Carlson is talking about how he will kill the dog right in the back of the neck, so he won't feel any pain. We also see in the second extract where Candy says, I shouldn't have let no stranger shoot my dog. I should have done it myself. And he says that to George. He says that directly to George. And so we can see now that George is, in the final extract, George is taking that advice from Candy. He didn't want Curly to kill Lenny himself, certainly because actually Curly says he wants to do it painfully. He wants to shoot him in the guts. He wants Lenny to die a slow and painful death and bleed out in that way. And George doesn't want that to happen. And he sets Lenny off to his death in the nicest way possible by telling Lenny about the place that they're going to have and getting him to look out across the water as a way of doing that. Okay, so we have 6 questions now. I would like you to pause the video again, answer those questions, and then that will be the end of today's lesson. Okay, we are going to be using foreshadowing in the lessons to come, and in the years to come in English. When you go into GCSE, you'll be looking at foreshadowing. So your knowledge and your understanding of this literary technique, Year 9, is really going to pay off. So, so spend some time answering these questions about foreshadowing. Once again, I hope you are all well, that you're all keeping up to date with your English work, and that you are staying safe and not driving your parents too crazy. Good luck, stay safe, and I will see you on Friday.